Some may find the following disturbing. Discretion is advised.
The Bears.
Because of the way they play the nickel corner here, and the nickel corner plays 88, 85% of the snaps. He's got to be like part linebacker.
The Bears.
When you're in the scouting room, there's going to be differences of opinion.
The Bears.
Once coaches get involved, of course, they've got their own opinions about what fits best for what they want to do, and that could be drastically different than what the scouts say.
Well, you're looking at traits, and number one, he tested very, very well.
The Bears.
One thing good about Kevin, he's been with 2 other organizations, as well as being the commissioner of the Big Ten. He's been around.
The Bears.
With Greg Olson, Jerry didn't want to get rid of him. I didn't want to get rid of him. Nobody wanted to get rid of him. One guy wanted to get rid of him. Mike Martz, because Mike Martz didn't know what the hell to do with him. We tried to talk Lovey out of hiring Mike Martz for a month and a half. He's playing zone, but number one, he doesn't get enough depth with the drop. But who the hell's giving away? How many times does a 305, 310-pound defensive tackle drop into coverage, especially in a key situation?
The Bears.
Greg, why are teams wrong on quarterback evaluation so often?
Number one, it's a hard position to evaluate. There's probably not as many real good quarterback evaluators as there needs to be.
The Bears. The Bears. The Bears.
Welcome, everyone, to a fresh edition of GTF Gabriel Talks Football. My name is Aldo Gandia. This is the first of several programs this week leading up to Barflight Tailgate Show right before the Chicago Bears' next game, which is against the Patriots. Last Monday, a week ago today, I very emotionally stated my disgust with Matt Eberflus and the coaching staff. A lot of the fans responding to that video were in agreement, but there were just as many fans who thought that I was rushing to judgment. Saw comments like, Aldo, knock it off. Finally, we have a quarterback and offense that drove to get the points they needed in the 4th last drive. And then there was this one. I feel bad for Aldo because he has Bears PTSD. Shake my head. Gabriel is correct. It's just one game. Relax. And then there was this one, the punch to the gut. Gabriel, it's time to look for someone better than Aldo. He is usually wrong and only has his stupid laugh. Worst of all, he is starting to argue with you all the time. So I wanted to share that with you and Greg and everyone else. So, Greg, where do we go to now?
We aren't going anywhere. We're here every week.
Yeah. But in terms of our point of view on Matt Eberflus and his coaching staff.
Well, I don't know if I know where the hell to begin. You know, I was cautiously optimistic. I kept thinking they're going to bounce back. And the main reason is ever since he got the job, even when they had, like last year, 5 losses in a row, the team always played hard. They were competitive. They were in games. They could have won some of those games until yesterday. They weren't competitive. They had no chance of winning. And, you know, I posted yesterday on X. I said, this is a crossroads game. Play well and win, and the noise goes away. Play poorly and lose, and the noise gets louder. And, you know, I posted later, I said, the noise might be so loud it's deafening. You know, I've lost faith. And for me to say that, boy, I'm coming a long way.
You really are, Greg. Last season, after a really tough loss, you were out on Justin Fields, and then a couple of weeks later, you started working your way back towards him and stuff. But it really is crushing year after year, all of this disappointment that players not only the players, but the coaching staff are inflicting on us Bears fans. And for the first time in a long time, Greg, I got to admit to you, I was tempted to turn off the game early in the fourth quarter, but I'm the type of guy, I'm going to stick with my team no matter what. If they do a tremendous comeback, I want to be here to watch it. But I had emotionally divested myself from the team, and that probably is going to continue. Greg, we saw 2 firings of NFL head coaches early this morning. First, the Raiders fired, not head coach, excuse me.
Coordinator and a head coach.
There you go. And then the Saints fired Allen. So why this Bears custom of not firing coaches in place? I asked you this last week. I'm going to ask you again. Do you think that's really a good idea?
Last week, I would have said no.
Uh-huh.
This week, I honestly believe that and we don't know everything that transpired last week, and we may never know, but there's obviously a disconnect going on now. You know, you heard it. You heard some rumblings from the players, and like I said, this should be a bounce back weekend, but there wasn't a bounce back. In fact, it got worse, and you can see it on their faces, meaning the players' faces. Hell, you saw it in Flus's face in the second half.
Yes.
He looked like dead man walking. So, and it was like the comment he made coming out of halftime, it's like, where'd that come from?
Mm-hmm.
It's just, and I didn't listen to the whole thing because I said, no, I got to turn that shit off.
Thank you.
Really, and then you watch, you know, Caleb coming off the field after he twisted his ankle a little bit, and it was like, there's something going on. The play calling has been atrocious. They're not putting Caleb into a position to make plays. Now, granted, we still got to, it's not an excuse, it's fact. He's a rookie, and there's going to be problems, but you got to design it to help him make plays, to keep things simple. They're not.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like, where do some of these things come from? And we see very few quick throws, quick outs, quick comebacks, quick slants. Do we even see them at all? Right. You know, and those are a staple in a lot of offenses. So that bothers me. That would help the run game. You know, somebody said, you know, if they don't beat Arizona, which is a really poor team, and I tell them that don't say Arizona is a really poor team. They're 4-4, and their losses have been against really good football teams. So, and they played good. They played a lot better than I thought. But Jesus, the Bears had maybe two good defensive series, the first 2, and that was it. And then the defense went right out the door.
Mm-hmm.
There was nothing there. It's like, what happened to the run defense? It was like the parting of the Red Sea.
Yeah, over 200 yards rushing allowed yesterday to the Cardinals. That was a kick in the nuts. You mentioned Caleb's ankle injury. This was him yesterday after the game.
Yeah. I landed wrong and just kind of tweaked it. And in the last play, the dude grabbed my ankle and gator rolled and tried to get off of it because when you stay on it, that's when bad stuff starts to happen and breaks and all of that. So tried to just let my body go so I could fall and roll with him. Yeah.
Do you sense you're okay?
Yeah, I'm okay. Yep.
You feel like maybe you shouldn't have been in the game at that point?
It's not my decision. You fight to the end of the game. If you're in the game, if not, coach makes a decision like that. You have to deal with it and figure out the next steps. But not my decision.
Not my decision. What do you think about that reply?
I think he was throwing a shot.
Yep.
If you want my honest opinion.
Yeah, sure do. Throwing a shot. And this morning, Greg, on WSCR radio,
you're going to have DJ Moore, right?
You're going to have DJ Moore coming up at you. It's 20 seconds left.
Has Matt Eberflus lost his football team?
I want to say no. The message yesterday was that we know we 4-4 now. It's just like being 0-0. But you just got to go out there and start stacking wins how we did, and that's the best thing we can do is win, and then let the chips fall how they fall after we do so.
What do you think about
4 words said it all? I wanna say no.
Yeah. Case closed. Oh gosh. So it really does appear like there is a mutiny going on at Hallis Hall.
I don't know if it's a mutiny, but it's like they've closed their ears and they're not listening.
Right.
And let me tell you something.
Yes,
when
sir.
players want a coach gone, you see it loud and clear. It comes through really easily.
So did we see that yesterday in Arizona?
Well, my experience says yes. And I hate to say that because I've been the guy, trying to hold the fort all along. And because of my experience of being and knowing what it's like. But, you can go back to Tressman. It was over for Tressman when they started getting beat by 40, but they lost him in the first freaking year. And he was they held on to him. But I don't think, but getting back to your question, look at it. If these people, the powers that be, wanted to make a change, I honestly believe George is not going to block it. And
interesting.
So then it gets down to who's going to be your interim coach. And last year when we talked about this, I didn't think they had anybody. But since then, there's Eric Washington is very capable of being an interim head coach. He's well-spoken, he's smart, handles himself well, he's a leader. Players respect him. He can be demanding. And the other one is Hightower. Didn't know much about Hightower. Tried to learn more about him. And from what I learned and people that I respect who know him told me that he's got a lot going for him.
Mm-hmm.
So, and one guy, I'll mention his name. We had him on the show, Eric Galco, who runs the East-West game. And Eric, Hightower was the head coach of one of the teams in the East-West game last year. And Galco just told me he was so impressive. Very easy to deal with, but just the way he ran his team. And it's, 5 days, not a big deal, but it was just, it's still a 5-day interview, so to speak. And he said he might have been the best guy they've had since he's been there.
Greg, the Chicago Bears have for now the last 2 weeks not shown the Monday morning press conference live as they have in the past. It's now being done via Zoom. Perhaps that's because there was travel involved, and they'll get back to it being normally broadcast live, especially after the next 3 home games. But apparently Eberflus was on before we went on.
Right before we started, yeah.
Right. And so he said that there's not going to be any changes to who is calling plays, whether it's on defense or offense. Do you agree with that?
No. I had a text conversation, so not a vocal conversation with Big Z. And, Big Z wrote that in his 10 points article this morning. And he thought they could. I think they should make Coach Brown, who's been an offensive coordinator, he's come from the same system, would make him the play caller right now because it just isn't working with Waldron.
Yeah, that is a disturbing part of it. For instance, Cole Kmet, he has 1 reception over the last 2 games.
He had no targets yesterday, let alone
none yesterday. Exactly. So he's had 1 reception over the last 2 games, and that was 2 games ago for 14 yards.
Now let's be fair a little bit. Now I haven't reviewed the tape yet.
Sure.
Could some of that be Caleb? Now some of this is on Caleb.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, there was one play I noticed where he was like trying to escape, and he had time to make a throw, and he kept trying to scramble, and there was a guy, and I don't know who it was because I saw the end zone view. There's a guy wide open to the left side that would have been a first down, yet he ended up either throwing an incompletion or getting sacked. So some of it's on him.
Yes, I
And
totally agree.
when he sees the tape, he will see that, and he's a smart enough kid that he's gonna, hopefully not make those mistakes again. That's part of the growing pains you're going to go through the entire year.
Mm-hmm.
I hear, well, it's not, Jaden Daniels not going through it. He's going through his problems too. Did he light it up in the second half last week against the Bears defense?
Mm-hmm.
Not do a thing?
Right. CJ Williams says, is Waldron not good at getting multiple people open? It's like game plan was for Rome, but forgot about Komet. When Komet gets his looks, Rome was odd man out. There is this team has an embarrassment of riches in terms of offensive weapons, but it never truly seems that the ball is being distributed to these weapons in a manner that would make it a very explosive type offense.
It's a hard question to answer, Aldo, only because we don't know who 1, 2, and 3 is in any particular play call.
Yeah,
okay?
Right.
So usually you can tell by the way he looks, especially when you watch the end zone view, you can see where his head goes, and his head's going to go to 1 right off the top. But yesterday, Keenan Allen was targeted a lot. He didn't come up with the catches he needed. One would have kept a drive alive in the fourth quarter. It was a flat out drop and hit him right here. His hands were like this instead of like this.
Yeah, there was a drop by Rome Odunze where his hands were not parallel with thumbs.
That was a difficult catch.
It was because it was a little out of reach.
Now.
Yeah,
you should make that catch.
Exactly. Brummy Bear has a theory. He says Cole was punished yesterday for speaking out this week. Last week, the famous words that people were not giving their best when they're in the dark, whether they're in the locker room.
I don't agree with that.
You don't believe that they ignored him?
No, I don't agree. That's cutting off your nose to spite yourself. Put it this way. That would be a fireable offense, in my opinion.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Let's see. Ramsey says, Greg stated last year that Fields hadn't been coached since he's been here. This speaks to the confidence in Getsy. Can someone explain why the Raiders couldn't see that? Yeah, when the Getsy got the job.
We said it when he got hired. What
right.
the hell are they? That one's not going to work. Didn't we say that?
Yes, indeed.
Okay, so it was like that was the most baffling hire of the entire offseason. That he got an OC job right away.
Yeah, that was.
It's like, who did he catch with a goat?
JTK wants to know: have you ever seen that many coaches fired this early in a season? Things are changing. There's more trades and there's more firings than ever before in the middle of the season, in my opinion.
No. And there might be more. I expected another one today. Didn't happen.
Yeah. Rome Odunze did have a good game yesterday in terms of the numbers. Let's see. I got here. He was a leading receiver with 5 catches for 104 yards. Shouldn't we expect these type of numbers across the board with the top 3 receivers? Close to 100 yards or over 100 yards for DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, and Rome Odunze, and half of that, 50 yards to 60 yards for Cole Kmet. Is that too much to ask for?
Well, there's a lot of things that got to, be in place for that to happen. Theoretically, one guy should be your main guy, and the other guys, Rome could have a big game one week, Keenan another week. But Keenan, he just hasn't impressed me all year. He looks slower. Now, I know he had a foot injury, and maybe that's it, but he's not getting any kind of separation. And if you watch tape of him when he was with the Chargers, he's never a fast guy, but he was such a good route runner and had the quickness to come out of a cut really quick that he always got separation.
Yeah.
Not getting it.
Not.
Now,
Very
could that
true.
be play design? The way, the routes he was running with the Chargers versus the routes he's running here? Yeah, it could be. But then, you got to catch the frickin' ball too when it hits you right in the hands.
Sure would help. Jay Sanders says Rome is the reason you don't draft wide receiver over offensive line. Rome played great, and they still got blown out. You agree with that theory?
Well, I've always been a draft big guys, whether it was offensive line or defensive line. But speaking of the offensive line,
Yes.
I mean, I have never seen. It's like the team is snake bitten. I have never seen.
Oh my God.
A team over a 2 to 3 year period that had as many injuries on the offensive line as this team has. Now, who knows how bad the right tackle is right now? Because he hurts a knee yesterday. And, you could potentially go into next week's game against the Patriots and both your tackles are out. And that's crazy because the guy who went in there, what the hell's his name, Carhan or something like that?
Yeah.
He was like a revolving door.
We've got some problems here.
It's just I've been critical of Tevin, but you got to give Tevin some credit. He's been gutting it out. He's getting hurt every week, and yet he's coming back the next week. And but a lot of guys, I just didn't see the effort. The one guy, I can't think of all these names. I'm getting old. Let me look this.
That's quite all right. Take your time. Jay Sanders says Jacob Martin. Yes.
That wasn't just a sack. That was a real good sack. And the way he beat the guy, and the power that he used and the way he threw the quarterback down, right away that told me this dude wants to play. And the week before he had 2-3 pressures in his first game back.
Yeah. Yeah, you can look at this team and say, well, certainly that player hasn't quit and that player hasn't quit, but there are some really big disappointments. Is it fair for me to start to blame Tremaine Edmonds a little bit for the team, the team's poor rushing defense yesterday?
I haven't looked at the game tape,
Mm-hmm.
but the middle was like,
my
like
God,
the Red Sea. So where was he? I can't answer it without looking at the tape.
Yeah, something is wrong in that middle, and Billings might be out for a long period of time with a potential pectoral injury. So
is that what he had, a pec?
That's what Brad Biggs reported today. Not officially, it was feared to be a pec injury. So we'll see. Maybe I'll look for some more updates on that.
Yeah, pec injuries are. I mean, if you got a torn pec, you're done.
Yeah, right.
It's a 3-month injury. You usually got to have surgery, and it's like he'll be ready to start lifting again in February. Well, before then, but I mean, he couldn't play again until probably February.
Mm-hmm. Such has a question. Ask Greg what he thinks about the plan to set Caleb up with some wide receivers first rather than give him a good offensive line. Yeah, he just answered that, Tuch. He likes the big guys.
I thought when they got Keaton that took the wide receiver out of the equation at first. I mean, we talked about that last spring.
Sure.
But you know what? I'm not going to play second guess. I mean, that's the general manager and the coach, because the coach is going to buy into what the general manager wants to do in a situation like that. They made that decision. You go back to Pohl's press conference coming out of preseason before the first week. I think the offensive line is as good as we've had. Yeah, maybe when healthy. Has there been I don't think we've seen the same group 2 weeks in a row.
Mm-hmm.
There's always been an injury. Go back, and I use this as a guide. Last year, the Buffalo Bills playoff team, like they perennially are. Their line was the exact same starting line all regular season and in the playoffs.
That's huge, man. And like Brad Biggs wrote this morning, the Bears have been fairly lucky this season by not having long-term injuries, players out for the season, but that luck appears to be running out.
Well, Murray got put on IR with a pec injury. You know, if he's got it now, they didn't say he needs surgery, but if he needs surgery, he's done.
He's done, right? And it was Eberflus in yesterday's press conference that said Billings had a pec injury, and so they would have more details later in the week. So that's from the horse's mouth.
They won't say anything till Wednesday. He'll say Wednesday morning injury update, and you know, in the meantime, they're short. And so now you got focus on the trade deadline, which is tomorrow. They might be able to get by without Billings. They've got depth on the offensive line. But, I mean, reality is who's out there. Like the one guy, Jacksonville, and I can't think of his name, the guard for Jacksonville, he's 33. He'll be 33 years old in December. He hasn't played good in like 3 years. Now, they just restructured his contract. He had a big contract with 2 more years after this year. Now he's got some void years and he's making 1.7. So they just like within the last 10 days, they restructured it, and they restructured Cam Robinson's to move him. So they get hit, but the team picking them up doesn't get hit with anything. I mean, you know, they're picking up the rest of the salary for this year. Can he get you out of a year? Maybe, but I wouldn't want to waste a draft choice on a player like that. Get somebody that's got something going for him that, you know, you can go beyond this year. In other words, I don't want a rental. Rentals are a waste of a draft pick. Yeah,
I agree with that. Totally agree. At this point, you got to be thinking. You have to be dedicated to your methodical approach to building this team. You can't panic at this point. D. Starren, regarding the offensive line, can you coach around the offensive line problems this team has? And I've been saying it for a while, Greg, that you just got to get rid of the ball quickly. You got to build schematically wise.
You've got no continuity. In fairness, when you got a different starting lineup, if there's one group where you got to have the same guys playing week after week after week, that's the group.
Yep.
And, you know, because they function together as one. 5 function as one. But that's not the case with this group. I mean, every week it's somebody different. And then somebody gets hurt. It's not like depending on how bad Darnell Wright's hurt, there could be a right tackle in there next week.
Yep.
Now there is a chance, because they said they thought it was going to be probably 2 weeks for Braxton, but I remember Flus said last week, but he's trying to work his way through that. Okay, so that there's maybe a glimmer of hope that he can play, and if that's the case, you can put Borum over on the right side, but it's still, you just got too many guys hurt, and it makes it hard for anything to work.
Yeah. Can't argue with that. Cannot debate that. All right, let's turn to some more questions here. Robert asks, Greg, what would it take from here on for coaches to keep their jobs at the end of this season? Winning,
9
right?
Wins. 9 wins.
It's an easy one, Robert.
9 wins.
That's right.
9 wins is a winning season.
Yeah, even 8 wins would be nice.
No, that's 8 wins is 9 losses, and you got a losing season.
I was talking about the remaining games. Yeah.
I'm saying no, 9 wins total.
I get you. Okay. New England Bears fan says, Greg, do you think Flus would have let Tyreek Stevenson start had there not been so much media pressure for discipline? I feel like he's catering to the outside noise instead of being himself.
I believe that question was made in the building way before it got to Wednesday. In fact, if you believe Jay, it was made Tuesday. Jay, meaning Jay Glazer. Jay has a close connection with the GM. So, and he's the one who said that Tyreek, and it was only a walkthrough that he walked out. It wasn't a regular practice. He walked out and basically turned around and walked back in.
Yes.
But just the idea that he did it, it turned off a lot of people. Like, what the hell are you doing?
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with that. And
that's really a lack of professionalism. And so if he wasn't, and that was on Wednesday though, but the decision was made before that. He found out Wednesday.
Right.
So I don't believe that they gave into the media at all. They made the decision. They made a group decision. So the decision was never that we're not going to play him. It was just that we're not going to start him.
Right.
But then I think they had to play him earlier because Smith got hurt.
Yeah.
He got an ankle or something.
Well, Smith played the first two series, went out, and then played the third series. And then I think on that third series is when he got hurt, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, but he probably would have played more.
Yeah.
Because actually in the first two series, he played good.
Yes, he did. I like the guy. He just gets hurt too much. It's like it seems like he's hurt.
Another guy never got hurt in college.
Unbelievable. Christopher Johnson wants to add to that. I think the way Eberflus handled Stevenson is the reason why he has lost control of the team. Stevenson should have been inactive after walking off at practice because he was mad and wasn't starting. I don't know.
I don't agree with that.
Yeah, I don't know about that,
I've been around
Christopher.
this game too long. You hit him in the pocketbook. This isn't college football now.
Right.
This is professional football. And you want to punish a guy, but you don't want to punish a guy and hurt the team at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, I mean, depending on what it is. So when you hit him in the pocketbook, now I don't know, there is a limit as to what you can fine a guy. It's part of the CBA. Whether it's, 10,000, 20,000, 30,000, I don't know what it is. But you hit him with that and you sit him. The whole purpose of it being is to, give the guy a slap in the face and open his eyes a little bit. Okay. And there is no place for selfishness with receivers, and not on this team, but with receivers in a lot of places. You see that shit all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And it gets thrown out the window. They pout and mouth off and everything else. But to me, that just shows selfish players.
Yeah. And I actually think that Eberflus might have handled this correctly later in the week. On Wednesday, when he was asked about Stevenson's disciplinary measure, and on Friday he faced a barrage of questions, he avoided responding to those. And I thought that probably was a good idea out of respect for Tyreek. Why announce that he is going to be benched for the start of the game?
Yeah,
and then,
there's no need for the scarlet letter.
Yeah, exactly.
So
if anything, the players should be respectful of that, but maybe not.
But there is definitely a disconnect going on right now between Flus and the players.
Yeah.
And honestly, I thought they were going to come out guns blazing. I really did. I thought this might be the best game they play all year. And boy, did I fall flat in my face on that one. I mean, there was no pizzazz whatsoever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. Let's see. We got some more good questions here. Danger T. There are concerns about the number and seriousness of injuries on the team, which raises questions about the role of the strength and conditioning coaches. Greg, does that matter at all, those coaches?
You look into it, and it depends what the injuries are. Number one, I know Jimmy Arthur, and I know he's very good.
Mm-hmm.
Pec injuries, okay, throw out the pec, because I don't know that much about pec injuries.
Okay.
Hamstrings, stuff like that. most of the time that's on the player because he's not doing the right things as far as proper hydration and nourishment, and that can cause pulls. Happens all the time. And I learned that a long time ago from Rusty, who's, been for years known as one of the best strength coaches in the business. Just retired after this last season. The pec injuries, though, I mean that is an overexertion.
Mm-hmm.
Could that be caused by doing too much lifting during the week? I can't answer that. Again, I don't know that much about it. I watched Notre Dame and they had a bunch of injuries, and some of the fans were saying it must be the strength coach's fault. I have always thought that no, that's not the case, especially if the nourishment is proper and during the season, you're not lifting really to add strength. You're lifting to maintain strength. So you're not doing stuff to overexert. You just want to keep what you have, if that makes sense, the way I'm saying that. And so, no, I wouldn't buy into that, but I'd say this, that, if they brought in a new head coach next year, he's going to bring in his own strength guy anyway, unless Ryan Poles said, no, this guy's really good. We got to stick with him, because a lot of times the coach brings in his own staff, but we'll have to see on that one.
You will indeed have to see. More good questions rolling in. Let's see. Matthew Focheesy, Gabe's, at this point, can we trust this coaching staff to develop the quarterback, Caleb Williams, correctly? That seems to be a top-of-mind thought for millions of Bears fans.
Just playing in games. Let's make an assumption. They make a change at the end of the year. Okay, just the mere fact that he is playing games every year is going to help him. He's seeing defenses. He's knowing what other teams do. He's learning how to combat that. So the experience matters more than anything. So now it would be up to the next guy to further develop that, if there is a next guy. Excuse me. I hate getting into that sometimes because, then the next question is going to be, well, who would be on your short list? Because I've got about 6 of those questions on X last night, and it's like the job isn't open yet. When the job's open, then we'll start looking. Everybody says Ben Johnson. And I'm not saying anything negative about Ben Johnson, but who can guarantee me or any of us that Ben Johnson's going to be a good head coach?
Not me. Fuck Ben Johnson. Sorry.
Why do you say that? No, I mean he's
because we got Lions fans in the chat room.
I know, but it's you go back to Robert Saleh. He was the guy in his class coming out. He was the defensive coordinator of a top team in San Francisco. He's the number one guy everybody wanted. Did it work? No. I mean, we can go through that every year. Then you go and you get Dan Campbell. And Detroit got belittled for hiring Dan Campbell. Mm-hmm. Never been a coordinator, been an assistant head coach, been an interim head coach. But most of his career as a tight end coach. But what Dan Campbell is a hell of a leader. And that's what the job calls for.
Yeah.
You got to have a guy who's a leader, and then you got to have good coordinators. Now, I keep going back to me, the guy who should have been a head coach a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
And even though he's now, I think, 61 years old, I would hire him in a second and a half as Dave Tope.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I was one of those guys that was belittling Dan Campbell, and I was wrong. The guy is better than I thought he was going to be. These kind of guys who come in with this bravado and talk all this crap, that's usually not going to win points with me early on. But really, I think the credit for that team, for that Lions team, goes to Brad Holmes. The draft decisions that he's made, and the hiring of the coach, you got to credit him for that too.
He's put together a whole good staff now.
Yeah,
his staff is good.
That is true. So, all right, let's get back to some more questions. Laz has got a comment. Call it like it is. Eberflus has very little media skills when he responds to questions or makes his statements. It's pathetic. Give me someone who can handle the media, he says. How important is that when evaluating coaches? Is, because he is the mouthpiece for the organization. And so when determining who should be a head coach, do you factor much into that?
That's another really good question. And it can be hard to answer because how often, if he's a coordinator, he's probably once a week talking to the media, but it's basic X and O stuff, not problems. And that's what a lot of times a head coach faces, is the problems, and you got to answer the problems. So do you really know the answer when you make the hire? And I think part of it then is doing the research, and it's got to be the right personality, any head coach, and the person, it's got to be a coach that relates to the players, can relate to the front office, and can relate to his other coaches. So it's a three-pronged thing. And I agree. He's terrible with the media. We've talked about that before. He doesn't come across with having a lot of confidence when he's in front of the media, and that he's nervous, and that he's searching for the right answers. And sometimes I think, he would have been better off when he got some stupid questions to just, pull in a Belichick and say, next question,
Yeah, exactly.
And that way you get rid of the bullshit questions.
Exactly. I had heard somewhere that Warren wanted Matt Eberflus to take some media training. And at the beginning of the season, I thought, it looks like he did.
Supposedly they had hired a guy.
Okay, yeah.
This was going back last year now.
Right.
I can't tell you that's fact. But that's what the rumor on the street is. And
interesting.
And I think it was for everybody involved.
Let's talk about the very top of the organization. Of course, George McCaskey and the McCaskey family, they're not going to sell the team. And there's been some comments in the chat room about selling the team. But now Kevin Warren has taken over for Ted Phillips, and it seems like he's involved more in the management of the team, the day-to-day operations. At least that's the impression we've gotten from certain reports. Do you think that, and one of the things that you've been saying since the show started, you want to limit the amount of voices at the top. Do you think that maybe Warren's voice, and maybe this is an unfair question, Greg, so I apologize.
Well, I can answer it this way, and I'm not trying to escape it.
Okay.
In that everybody's got to know what their limitations are. So if he is picturing himself as a football guy and trying to make football decisions, then he's making a mistake. He's making a mistake to himself. He's not being fair to himself. He's not being fair to the people within the organization. He is not a football guy. He is an executive. He is plenty good enough to run the organization, but don't try to step on the football people's toes. When that happens, you're going to have problems too. Is it happening? I don't have an answer. I don't know that.
Right. It is interesting because, I've looked at as Kevin Warren as a potential savior for the franchise, fresh thinking. He's worked with the Vikings, a good organization, worked with the Rams, a good organization, did some really good things at the Big Ten. They're making a lot of money, and it was Warren who executed those contracts with the broadcast stations. But boy, it doesn't seem like he's done anything to advance the movement of the building and the stadium. In fact, it's probably gone back because he switched the focus to the Chicago lakefront, and on and on and on. So
we'll put it this way. We both know that had the plan stayed, that the Bears got roughly $200 million into that property down the street from you.
260 million. Yeah.
Is it, well, they paid 197, but then it cost them money to demolish all the buildings on it. So now it's a vacant lot.
Right.
You know, how many millions of dollars that cost, I don't know.
Consultants on the building of the stadium, all this stuff that they've wasted money on.
And they're still paying taxes on that property.
Exactly.
Okay, and they've gotten a lot of the tax problems not totally fixed, but going in the right direction.
Mm-hmm.
And probably can be fixed if you put enough pressure on it. But then you're going to switch that. You're going to have a piece of property that, you know, all of a sudden becomes worthless to them, and somebody's going to try to steal it. And you've already got 200 million into it, you know, so you're going to get your money on that to build a stadium that the park district is going to run that you're going to rent. Now that doesn't make sense to me, and it's never made sense to me. And I get the thing. Yeah, downtown's better. Okay, I get that if they own the stadium, but they're not going to own the stadium. And to build up that area in Arlington Park and build up around it, the money that team can make is just outrageous. It's a license to print money.
It really is.
And what there's a way they can develop that thing properly. And you know, I think that just from the access from the fan presentation of being able to go to the game.
Yes.
Because you're going to have a place to park.
That's right.
I mean, you know, real little simple things.
And you too can park in my parking driveway for $50.
Hey, I might not be alive by the time that thing goes.
I hear you. Same here, man.
You know, I can use, I bring up Buffalo a lot. But I can use their stadiums out in the suburbs, Orchard Park, southern suburb of Buffalo. The new stadium is directly across the street. I mean, it's not 300, 400 yards from the old stadium on the other side of Abbott Road. So the parking is hurt for the next couple of years until the stadium gets built. But they still have, and what Buffalo is famous for, they got these enormous lots that go around that stadium. And the tailgating is literally world famous.
Yeah. You
know, with Bill's Mafia. And that fan experience is just incredible.
Yeah. Because
of that. And, you know, I was a season ticket holder there for years and years and years after that the stadium opened. The stadium opened in 1973. It was the year O.J. Simpson ran for 2,000 yards.
Nice.
That was my last year in college. And I had season tickets. And, you know, my game was on Saturday, and we'd get, even if we were on the road, we'd get home, you know, early Sunday or something. And then I'd always go to the home games as in my last year of college. Had season tickets up until I started working for the Giants. And then I gave them up because I didn't think it was right. But, you know, the fan experience there, because of the way that whole thing was built, is second to none. And I the development of Arlington Heights first came out, I go, wow, this is just going to be superlative for the fans.
A10 Warthog, formerly Badass Warthog, he says that it might be a cash flow issue that the Chicago Bears are having, and that's why they're delaying to get.
I don't think so. I mean, I'm just. I think that's they can get the money. The damn team's worth $8 billion, for Christ's sake.
Yeah, exactly. The NFL will gladly lend them that money because they'd love to see the Bears in.
Well, the league will give money to every team, but there's a limit on that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there is a limit. That's true. Heard that. More questions are coming in. Let's see. Keith Harris says the Bears need a coach who's a stickler for detail. He's an old school coach who doesn't take shit. This locker room needs it. You think that should have a bearing? You know, a really strict. We've seen them all, but it seems like the last coach to win. Well, it is the last coach to have won a Super Bowl at the Bears is Ditka and his furious style of coaching. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, Lovey got to a Super Bowl, and Lovey was the total opposite of Ditka. Lovey never swore.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, his swear word would be "gall dang it."
Josh Brown says Lovey really set up a strong culture. I think that is missing. His only downfall is that he couldn't find the right offensive coordinator.
Yeah, you know, I thought Ron Turner, with the pieces we had, was a good coordinator. I'm not gonna. It was after Ron left, and then he wanted to bring in his old buddy, Mike Marks. That was one of Lovey's downfalls.
Yeah.
But he still went 10-6 and got fired, which was ridiculous. And that's all on Phil, because Phil wanted to hire his own coach.
Right.
Because Phil thought he's smarter than everybody else.
Yeah.
And so what's he get? He gets a guy like him, real heady guy.
Mm-hmm.
Phil couldn't manage, and that guy, and Tressman couldn't coach.
Yeah, it was Arians that was, I guess, second for the job, and he kind of fits more of that Lovey Smith Ditka style of coaching, a little bit more verbose, for lack of a better way of putting it, than Tressman, who Tressman clearly did not make an impression in any press conference he's ever had. He's just too heady, too nerdy. Greg, I got a tough question for you here, and I got to share it with you. Normally, I wouldn't even share a question like this, but I was thinking about this very same thing. I'm concerned that the Bears might not win another game. And D. Staron asked that question. Can you see the Bears winning any more games this year? I'm worried. With all the injuries and the attitude that this team is developing, I'm kind of worried.
Well, if they don't win this week, they're in a shitload of trouble.
Oh, yes.
Because right now, New England is the worst team in the league.
Yeah.
Carolina beat the Saints, and Carolina might be fourth or fifth right now because they won. At least Carolina's playing hard. Mm-hmm. Saints, they lost 7 in a row, fired their guy this morning. New England's just pathetic. If you can't beat New England, then you can't beat anybody.
Yep. I totally agree. That was a stunning. We'll talk about a couple more NFL games in a moment here. Let me get through some more of these.
I know I saw a little of the Dallas game. That's about it.
Oh, okay. D. Staron also asked, can the Chicago media creating controversy last week take some of the blame for Sunday? You want to blame the media for
Absolutely. Come on. That's they're stars at that. They are gonna turn anything into controversy and stir up the fan base. That's what they do. Not necessarily the print, the talk.
Okay. Well, and that's not, yeah, you're right about that. The media and sports journalism, there's different. Brad Biggs is not part of the sports talk world. He comes on and does his hits on WSCR, but he always comes on as a journalist, and he reports on things. He rarely speculates.
I'll say one thing about Brad. He is very, very, very fair.
Yes, I agree with that. And some people pick on him because he'll say a negative thing about the Bears, but then they turn around and says,
we could get, speaking of that, we could get Biggsy on, but he can't come on Mondays because right when we're on, they're doing a presser.
Yeah. Yeah, there is no new news on Billings Peck, but we'll continue to check.
There won't be until Wednesday unless it's leaked to Rappaport or Schefter.
Yeah. Laz wants to know about Dominique Robinson. He started the game in place of the injured Montez Sweat. Laz says I saw him play, make a play early, but didn't hear from him again. He did have 3 tackles for the entire game. Did you get a chance to zone in a little bit on Dominique?
What the plan was, the way I saw it, was he was supposed to play on base rundowns because he is a decent run defender. And then when you get into obvious pass situations, you pull him. And that's what they were doing. And he made some plays in the run game. Later, I don't think he was playing as much, even though they were running the ball more. Now, whether he was, again, I haven't reviewed the tape, so whether he was making mistakes, I don't know.
Right.
I mean, he went from not dressing for the first 7 games or first 8 games to starting in the next game. But that was all because of Sweat, and I imagine Sweat will be back this week.
Yeah. Yeah, based on what I've read, it does seem like the only thing that was keeping him off the field yesterday was just the pain was a little bit too intense. So hopefully that'll alleviate and he can play next week against the Patriots. Ramsey, the YouTube referee, asks, I understand Chris Morgan is highly touted. However, how much fault do you attribute to him for the offensive line woes? It's a tough question.
Well, does he, and we don't know the answer to all this, he's got to be the chef to put together a meal with the ingredients that are given to him. Okay, so if you got to make chicken salad out of chicken shit, it's not always easy. Okay, now if they're not playing good, if they're better than how they're playing, then it's on him. But let's put it this way: if there is a new coach next year, there's going to be a new line coach because it all goes hand in hand.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the only thing here's where I would put a little asterisk, and it'd be up to whoever got the job. But let's just say they make a change. Do you want to, generally speaking, when you make a head coaching change, that means schematic changes. It could mean schematic changes on both sides of the ball. You've got people that were drafted, signed, traded for to play within this scheme. And except for yesterday, the defense has been really sound.
Yeah.
Okay. So that being said, would you hire a coach and highly suggest to him that he keeps Eric Washington so that you keep some sort of continuity on one side of the ball?
Heck, I would. I saw it work with Buddy Ryan and the Chicago Bears. So I definitely would seriously consider that. One of the things about the offensive line coach, though,
number one, I like Eric. So I've worked with Eric for a few years, and he's just, he's a man's a man.
Yes.
He's a good person.
Yes. He oozes head coach aura about him. Absolutely. Let me ask you this about the offensive line coach, because the Bears have had some good ones. I've heard, former players talk highly about Harry Heaston. Yet Harry Heaston is run out of town. He's terrible and so forth. And we all know Harry Heaston is not a bad coach. He's a very good.
No, what happened there was a disconnect between him and Matt Nagy. Harry was like the run game coordinator, and how the run game should be blocked in his mind versus how the run game should be blocked in Nagy's mind were two different things. So they had a difference of philosophy, and the head coach always wins, even though the assistant coach was the guy that was right.
I feel like with all of these offensive coordinators who come in highly respected and then lose with all of this failure, I think it has to do with the player personnel decisions that are being made. Like you said, he's the chef, but if you're being given expired products, these moldy cheese and stuff to build a cheeseburger, it's going to taste bad.
Don't make me sick to my stomach not talking about
it. All right, we got some more questions here. Robert Phillips says, can we blame these last 2 games on the away curse? We'll be starting again at home. Next 3 games, still have home wins. I think he's saying coming ahead. What do you think about these road woes the Bears are having?
I'm going to say this because I saw Ari Miroff, is that how you say his name? He said they're
yes.
0-17.
Right.
What the fuck do you call the game in London? They only traveled 4,000 miles. That was the furthest road game they've played.
Yeah.
And I don't care if it was designated as a home game. It's a road game. You had to get on a plane. You had to fly to a site and, put up with all the problems of traveling and moving a whole organization over there for 5 days, 6 days. So that was a road game, and they won that game. So I'm not buying that part of it. I mean, it's always more difficult to win on the road, but that was a road game. So I think you got to count that as a road game, whether it was designated as a home game or not. But yeah, it's definitely a problem, especially when they were as bad as they were yesterday. That, to me, that's the concerning part. If you play real good and you lose the game, you're pissed off, but you can live with it.
Mm-hmm.
But they didn't show up yesterday, and that's the worrisome part to me.
Robert is saying maybe the Bears should have traveled a day earlier to Arizona to get
it's a 3.5 hour flight. It's not that bad.
Okay, more questions. Danger T. Hey, Greg, who is the best player on the team? Also, do you think the Bears have any Hall of Fame talent? I'm concerned that without a Hall of Famer, the Bears can't win Super Bowls.
Well, it's the team's not a finished product yet. Mm-hmm. They need one more off season to get where they want personnel wise. There's some good players on this team. Right now, what's going on right now, in my humble opinion, has nothing to do with talent. Now, yes, part of the offensive miscues have to do with just a totally broken offensive line because of all the injuries. But that being said, there's still, I don't know what happened to the defense yesterday. I mean, that the defense has played they've given up a big run here and a big run there, but they never, in the 3 years he's been here, haven't seen big plays like yesterday and getting knocked off the ball like yesterday. That was just, to me, that was lack of effort more than anything else. Lack of concentration.
Indeed. And I just want to be fair to Robert. He says, my point was something about our preparations for away games isn't working clearly. Yeah, there's something about our road performances outside of the Jacksonville game that isn't working. Eberflus's record on the road, the official record on the road is dismal, whether you want to include.
Yeah, there's no question.
Yeah. All right. A few more here. Let's see. Fochisi, Bears' best offensive games this year have been when Cole Kmet is heavily involved. I think he's part of the secret sauce. Let's get him involved.
That falls on the OC.
Yeah,
to
Mr. OC.
him into being, he's got to be number one or number two on a lot of plays.
Absolutely. We got Mr. Shorty in attendance, and of course, he's a big Jim Harbaugh fan, so he's going to offer this one to you. Does Greg still think it was better to keep Flus over going big for Harbaugh?
Look, Harbaugh is a nutcase. Okay, yes, Harbaugh is a good coach. He's still a freaking nutcase. But here's the most important thing: he didn't want to come here.
Yeah.
Okay, he wanted to go out to the West Coast, and it's as simple as that. And the job wasn't available. The job was available when he was supposedly, when he was interviewing up in Minnesota, but he was using that interview because Michigan had cut his pay because they were playing lousy. Mm-hmm. And they actually cut his pay a little bit. And so he was trying to gain some leverage. And then he beats Ohio State 2 years in a row, wins a national championship, and walks out the door and says, "Screw you, Michigan," even though it's his alumni. He's alumni. But fact of the matter is, if he stayed at Michigan, he would not be the head coach of Michigan today because of all the irregularities that went on in the program. He would have a 10-year show cause that means he's never going to coach college football again now.
Let us see what we have here from MC Fact. The question for Greg. A transition to a new head coach should be seamless. Good coaches tailor around the players. Do you agree, Greg, that good coaches tailor their game plans around the players?
That's a misnomer, because you know, I've been around new coaches several times in my career, and they all got their own schemes that they want to use. Yeah, you can adjust the scheme a little bit. It's also usually more defense than offense, but you got to find the right players. Perfect example is when we brought in Lovey versus Dick Duran, and Greg Blosh was the defensive coordinator. Nothing wrong with Greg as a defensive coordinator. Excellent defensive coordinator, but entirely different philosophy than the one Lovey had. And so we had to have different players, basically in the whole front seven. So, you know, that first year we had to rebuild the defensive line. It took a couple of years to do that, to really do it. And that's one of the problems of making a coaching change. And, you know, like, let's take the offensive line. The offensive line right now, they're drafting athletic guys because they want to use an outside zone scheme, and you got to have guys who can go out and play in space. So every guy they draft on the offensive line, since Poles has been here, the one common denominator is they're all very, very athletic. You could get another guy who wants to have more of a power scheme, and then you don't need the athleticism like this is. But are some of these guys big enough? They should be. I mean, Tevin Jenkins is 320-something pounds. Wright's 325, 330 pounds. They should be able to do either kind of scheme, but they got the athleticism. You might need a little more meat inside, though, at all the guard positions and at the center position. But there's going to be players. There's going to be types of players. There's going to be a profile written up at each position. And these are what the scouts are told to get. And because you're looking for certain kind of people, that means you're going to get rid of people. And it's just, to me, when you make a change, you have a really good change and it works good right away. Yes. But a lot of times you got to take a step backward before you take a step forward.
Mm-hmm. Well said, my friend. Laz wants to know, Greg, do you think Tyler Biadasz, the center from Washington, would have been a better signing than what we have here at center? I think he was a 2020 third or fourth round pick. Laz, our chatter here, says, I'm concerned about Poles' vision. Poles is getting a lot of criticism because he hasn't drafted offensive linemen.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, the guy he signed to play center hasn't played center yet.
Yeah, it's been tough, man.
You know, and that's Bates, and Bates got hurt. And Bates is a guy that, you know, he never got hurt when he was in Buff. It's a hard, you know, you're going backwards on that. You know, you're second guessing. Who knows? The guy's got to be a scheme fit, you know, too. So is it an athletic guy who can play in space? Shelton has played in this scheme. He played for the Rams. He was a starter for the Rams for the last 2 years. And the Buffalo scheme was similar, not the same, but similar. So Bates was a scheme fit. So you got to say, you know, the guy, was it the right guy? I can't answer it. You know, I like the Bates thing because I've seen Bates play. I know how good he is. And he's capable of playing really three positions. He could play tackle, guard, and center. So, you know, it's hindsight. You know, the question is hindsight. And, you know, that's a no-win situation going into hindsight and try to second guess people.
Indeed it is. Indeed it is. Greg, when I worked in corporate America and you're having problems with an employee, you don't fire him right away. You bring him in and you say, okay, over the next period of time, this is what I want to see improvements on, ... And so you put him on what is called a PIP, a performance improvement plan. So I ask you, if Ryan Poles were to bring Matt Eberflus into his office and say, I'm not happy with the way the team is going all the way till beginning now to week 17, week 18, I want to see these improvements. Help me make out what that PIP would look for. What do you want to see Eberflus improve on?
Everything. No, as I said it last week. I said it last week, Aldo, and I said all along. I had no problem with the effort of this team. And I posted it yesterday. I said, when the effort's there, you always got a chance. But when there's no effort, it's over. And yesterday, there was no effort. And to me, that's a reflection on what's going on in the building.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
I mean, hey, look at we do this thing every week. We've been doing it for 4 years every week. And you know how I think. And, this is usually I'm really upbeat on Monday. I try not right now.
Caesar is asking, so you think the players quit yesterday? And for some reason, I had a sense of deja vu just now. I think that question's been posted previous years on our show. What do you think? The players quit yesterday?
I don't know if that's the right word, but can you say didn't give a maximum effort?
Yeah, it does. And I saw this
I
somewhere.
said it earlier. When the players don't want to work for somebody, you know it.
Yep. Yep, and we sort of seen that. Now, Eberflus admitted that he called the wrong play call in that final play of the first half where the Cardinals scored a 50-plus yard touchdown because he called a pass rush play, and that left the gap for
a run.
DeMarcado to score that touchdown. He admitted that publicly, which first of all to me was, okay, guys, see how I'm taking responsibility? I'm telling the national media that I fucked up. Excuse my language. And then secondly, it seemed to me that bad play call really took the air out of the Bears defense, and they came out in the second half making more mistakes than I've seen in any game this season. Any thoughts on that?
I'll put it this way. They had to come out of that, come out in the second half. They were getting the ball. So they had to come out and score right away. And they went 3-and-out. And to me, that was it. They have, to date, they've been pretty good in the second half.
Mm-hmm.
And they were as bad in the second half as they were in the first half. There was just no pizzazz at all.
Yeah. And J2K is right. On that last play, I saw that, J2K, there was two guys in the same gap on that run play.
And that can be that. And, I've said this before, trying to explain the defense. Mm-hmm. It's a one gap defense where every player is like assigned in their front seven is assigned a gap. One player fucks up, and that leaves a big opening.
Yeah.
It's a very disciplined scheme.
Mm-hmm.
I remember, watching what they would do in pre-practice stuff. And like Bob Babich was the linebacker coach at first when Ron Rivera was the coordinator. And he'd have these upside down garbage cans out in the field, and those are supposed to be the defensive linemen. And then he had his linebackers there, and they'd be practicing, just doing walkthrough of what they're supposed to do in certain defensive play calls. And it was all about just to keep drilling in their head the gap control. It's a gap control defense. And what you can't do is freelance. You've got to be very, very disciplined. So could Edmonds have done the wrong thing? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
If it wasn't him, somebody else did. Because but also, did he call some sort of stunt with the pass rush that left a big gap?
Right.
I don't have the answer to that.
Right. Zach Pickens, do you have confidence that he can come in and do an adequate job of substituting for an injured Andrew Billings?
Well, they're going to play a rotation.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they still got 4 defensive tackles on the roster. They were playing with 5. So if Billings is out, is he as good? No, because I mean he's the real beefy guy up front, and he was playing really well.
Mm-hmm.
But let's first find out, one thing at a time. Let's find out what the injury is. If he's got a torn pec, he's done. Wait till next year.
Yeah.
But if he doesn't, if it's just a strain, maybe he just misses a couple weeks.
J2K wants to make the point that Borum and Kirana Amagaji forced Waldron's hand to use him as a chip blocker. That's why he hasn't been targeted enough, in his opinion. I think that's a sensible way of looking at that. But
I don't understand what do you.
Cole wasn't going on many routes because he had to help with blocking.
Well, I mean, Abagaji didn't come in until when, the second half last week?
Correct.
Okay. But that's still, you had all the first half and part of the second half before Braxton went down that he wasn't utilized in.
Jim Richo says that Frank Ragnow, the Lions center, missed 1 game with a partially torn pec. Of course, the Lions are invincible.
It depends what it is, the severity of the surgery or the severity of the injury, and then what it needs to repair it. Every injury is different, so to say, well, this guy did it, well, were they equal injuries?
Yeah, exactly. We can't compare those injuries. I thought yesterday's game, Bears Cardinals, was poorly officiated. It's not why the Bears lost, but it was poorly officiated. You agree with me?
Well, I put one thing out. Number one, the one thing, and it was a drive staller. The illegal procedure lined up in the backfield on Larry Borum, that was really picky. There was another call. There was a holding call that I thought was really, really picky. The chop block that the running back had, that was a 15-yard penalty. I thought that was kind of picky. That was really calling it close to the vest. The other thing that I had posted it on X, I said, these guys are letting the defensive backs mug the receivers. And I said, that's fine, as long as they call it both ways.
Right.
Which so you got to have consistency on both sides of the ball. And what I didn't see is total consistency with the calls.
Mm-hmm. What do you think about the safety call? D-Star and others think it was a bad call.
Well, that was the chop block.
Okay, you're right. It was.
When you look at that, the guard had barely touched the guy.
Yeah.
So it wasn't. I get the what they are meant to do with the rule and why it's there, but that one was. It wasn't even close to blatant. I mean, the guard had hardly touched the guy.
Are you surprised we didn't see Doug Kramer yesterday at fullback?
I mean, no situation.
At this point, let's try anything on this offense. All right, I got just one last one saved. If you got one final question for Greg before we call it a day here, please send it in. This one was from J2K earlier. He says that punt on the kickoff,
on the safety. I don't know what the hell happened there.
Yeah, frankly,
they were trying to do an onside.
Yeah, right.
And obviously Taylor looked like dumbfounded. Something missed. Exactly what happened, I don't know.
Yeah, the onside punt was that. I've never seen that before. When I saw it, I was like, what the hell just happened? And then I just moved on to other things because by that time my energy level was down to nothing. Greg, so where does this team go from here? They got the New England Patriots. Already the Bears are a 1-touchdown favorite, according to Brad Biggs in his 10 Thoughts column.
Well, that's Joe Fortenbaugh. He gets his stuff from.
Yeah. So what do you think?
Last week was yesterday was supposed to be the makeup game.
Yeah.
New England right now is the worst team in football.
Mm-hmm.
If it's even if it's a close game, there's something wrong.
Yep.
And if they lose the game, you may be right. They might not win another game for the rest of the year.
I mean, look at the schedule after next week's Patriots game. It's the Packers, the Vikings. Both of those games are on home. And then a short week, Thanksgiving in Detroit, then travel across the country to play the 49ers and then the Vikings. I mean, Packers, Vikings, Lions, 49ers, Vikings, Lions again, the Seahawks on a Thursday night, and then finish with the Packers. It's not looking real good for the Chicago Bears franchise.
At least for Seahawks is home, right? Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I'd hate to have to go out to the West Coast again. That'd be three West Coast trips plus the trip to London.
Yeah.
Hey, 1 week at a time now.
Yes.
And we'll find out a little about this team and their respect for the power that be. Am I saying that right? Because I don't want to make it plural, not powers that be. That
Yeah, power to be. Yeah.
Yeah. Whatever.
Warthog says it's pretty sad that we have talked about beating the Patriots. Yes. Oh Lord.
Yeah. Hey, yeah, no question about it. That's a terrible football team right now.
Mm-hmm. And I agree with J2K that Drake May has played better than I thought he would. I mean, he tied up the game with the last minute drive. That was impressive. The entirety of the game, he wasn't great by any means, but he's playing better than I expected. Nice development on his part.
Who did they play? I don't even remember who they played, but they did that
Titans.
That last touchdown was like, I saw that play.
Yeah,
that was kind of miraculous.
That was pretty cool. Don Burr, our resident Lions fan, says, Aldo, I remember Greg saying last week, Bears are going to whip the Lions' ass. Do you still feel that way?
Nope. I'll make you feel good today, Don, okay?
That's right. Jim says, don't forget, we'll be back here. We'll bring that up again in a few weeks. Yeah, I'm sure you'll be back here. The thing is, if the Bears do beat the Lions, that's when I want you back here.
That's right. As soon as the first thing out, hey, Don Burr, where are you? Right?
Exactly. Greg, again, highly composed, but where truly is your level of disappointment with this organization right now?
Well, not the organization. To me, there's an internal problem. Disconnect between the coaching staff and the players. I mean, it came to, and they could have solved that or make it look like it was solved yesterday. They didn't do it. Like I said yesterday, I said, if they play good and win, the noise goes away. Play poorly and lose, the noise is going to be just tremendous. And that's what's going to happen. It's going to be noise all week.
Hey, Greg, and please.
And they deserve it.
Yeah, they deserve. Absolutely. I agree with everything you said there. But I do have to ask you this tough question. I know how close or the respect that you have for the McCaskey family. But the truth is that since George has been the chairman of the team, I think 2001 or something like that, there's just been really, really a lot of bad things happen, with the exception of the team that you helped to take to the Super Bowl.
George wasn't. Michael was running the team when we went to Super Bowl, not George.
Okay,
George came on 2010, I think.
That makes sense. Yes.
Yeah, and that ended up being Jerry's last year.
Mm-hmm.
So, is George more hands-on than Michael ever was? Yes, no question about it. That's George. Michael totally stayed out of the picture.
Interesting. Well, Michael inherited a team that was already playing at a playoff level, if I remember correctly. Well, maybe
I mean,
not.
there was stuff that went on with him before we got here.
Yeah,
and that was like
the Dave
after
McGinnis thing.
Yeah,
Mhm.
but when he was strictly chairman of the board, and Ted was president, and I mean, you wouldn't even see. Sometimes you only saw Michael once a week.
Yeah,
Not
right.
like he was there all the time. You never, we'd have a little meeting with him a day or two before the draft just to tell him. We'd meet with him and Ted just to say, this is what we're going to do. They'd ask a couple questions, but neither one of them would really say sure or anything like that. In fact, have conversations that I told you about before. I'm not going to mention
Sure.
who it was, but he said that where in Ted's case, Ted knew that he wasn't a football guy, and he wasn't about to get involved in football decisions, because then it'd fall right back on him. And this guy says, I don't know if that's the case with the person now.
Interesting. Yeah, that's the concerning thing is, we'll talk more about that topic if the losing continues. But my overall question is George McCaskey just unlucky that he or has he made poor decisions because he just doesn't have the skill to hire the proper guy for the job, or at this point, are you going through some of the things that some of us fans are going through, which is a lack of trust in the McCaskey family to bring us back to the promised land, so to speak?
I don't know if I can answer completely. I think George had a say, how much say, in the Nagy Pace hire. I think George let Polian do. Polian probably wouldn't have taken the job if he couldn't do it the way he wanted to do it. Knowing Bill Polian the way I do. Conversations I had with Ernie, I know there were like some other people that were involved, not in the head coaching part, but in the general manager part, that there was just no matter how good they were in the interview, there was no shot they were getting the job.
Right. It is a sad time for Chicago Bears fans with high expectations, and the one-loss record, isn't terrible, but the level of play, what we saw yesterday, as Greg has told us on this show, is the players not playing at 100%, seemingly not playing at 100%. The level of discord that's going on at Hallis Hall has us all concerned that this is just going to be another losing season for the Bears.
There's a lot of verbalization going on.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and that continued today with DJ on Mully and Haw when he goes, how did he say that? I don't want to say that, or something like that.
Here it is, real quick.
Has Matt Eberflus lost this football team?
I don't want to say no.
I don't want to say no.
4 words.
Yes.
4 words said a whole lot.
Yeah, it does.
If he would have said no, but he was, I don't want to say no.
Yeah, that's damning. Last question for you. God, I forgot what it was. Either way, yeah, we are getting old. I'm getting old and tired of this team, but I'm never going to quit on the Bears. I'm always going to have hope, and I do have to admit, though,
pretty soon we're going to say fuck it and start thinking about the draft.
Exactly.
And Carolina's screwing up that high second right now.
That's right. Gabriel Talks Football is going to be Gabriel Talks the Draft, and the show starts the 1st of December. All right, for Greg Gabriel, I'm Aldo Gandhi. The Mike North Advantage Show is at 3 p.m. Central. Hope you join us then. Goodbye, everybody.
See you later.